Right here, we're going to go ahead and go over this brake system. Everyone needs them. Doesn't matter if you can go, if you can't stop. There's a few things. You got your regular brake pad or brake shoe service, which is basically the linings of the brakes, which is a wearable item and really a maintenance item. And it depends on how hard of a braker you are, how often, stop and go traffic. So it's not really a mileage recommendation as much as per vehicle recommendation. Now, sometimes you will hear a little bit of noise because what it has is what's called the wear indicator, which is a little tiny piece of metal that comes out and makes some noise. On a lot of your European, Volkswagen, Audi, Beamer, Mercedes, stuff like this, you're actually going to have a light that goes off because there's a sensor in there that wears down to the metal, and once it grounds itself out, it usually takes a specialty scanner in order to reset it, including Mini, I would say, does that also. The Mini Cooper, that is. So going along, normal brake pad service. Basically, this shows a good visual indication. I guess the purple item, that would be your brake pad sensor in a lot of your Euro vehicles. It does cost more usually to replace it. However, it's an indicator that your brakes do need to be done. When they go ahead and wear, basically that's what the sensor would look like. It's basically just a one-way communicator, and what it does is grounds itself out to the rotor is the strategy that they use in order to cause the computer to know that that needs to be replaced. So that would be the replacement of that in order to replace the brake pads. A lot of people don't do that, and I tell you what, that's when you get noise, is when there is no good ceramic lube on the back. It causes the vibration. Always use a nice high temperature ceramic lube. I would say Permatech or Bendix has a good product. I'll put it in the link below if you're going to do your own brake pads, but that's what you need, is a good high temperature brake lube, and I'll put a couple down here that I would use. I do like to use a specific color because most other people aren't gonna use, say, like a purple or a blue, and so we'll know that we were the ones who had our hands on it last. Or if you have another component issue, sometimes something will wear out prematurely, or that's what killed the last set of brake pads. We find that too, and a lot of times we'll be able to warranty out the pads. However, whatever the underlying issue to the premature wearing of it needs to be addressed, whether that's hydraulic, caliper, something to this effect. We'll go ahead and show you. Okay, so what we got going on here is from the inside, that's your main hydraulic piston that is transferring hydraulic fluid into those pads, which is stopping thousands of pounds of force in your vehicle. You apply the brakes, you release them. Some pretty basics. If you have air, remember, the hydraulic system actually transfers thousands of pounds per square inch when it travels, and it's a little tiny line, but that hydraulic fluid doesn't compress like even water or gas or anything else. It's a completely different substance to where it transfers all the fluid, and you hit the pedal inside is the idea. It's showing you how the master cylinder works, sends the fluid down. You get a brake fluid exchange. This is how you would have bled the brakes. Show you again. You basically would pump it. That only shows one pump. It's usually a lot more, and a lot of times you're dealing with ABS systems now too, where you have to get the computer, special scanner, special procedure, and the hydraulic pump runs through it and exchanges out all that old fluid that wears and tears on you. So we'll go ahead and go over the next item. What we got here is we got the main, what would be a car in England, because it looks like they're driving on a different side of the road. However, same idea, just be the other side would be the driver hitting the brake master cylinder. What you have is a vacuum booster is what this is going to show you. And the vacuum booster is basically going to make it easier for you to brake. That's what applies power brakes. And what it does is it uses a strategy of pulling extra vacuum or suction off of the engine and it feeds into this with a one-way valve, and because of that, it allows it to be a much easier pedal than, say, like your old muscle car, or if you've ever had a car die on you and you think your brake pedal's stuck or it doesn't work. No, you just got to push really hard in order to get that sucker to stop. So let's go ahead and check this out here. We got the booster, shows the strategy. You get the vacuum from the blue port coming in, hit the brakes. Yo, hit the brakes. Be passenger drivers, right? And basically is just showing how the vacuum differentiation. Now, if the diaphragm tears, that's where you don't end up with the power braking any longer. Does actually make your engine run horrible most of the time. And some people come in and say, you know, the engine just runs bad. Only when I hit the brakes, though. Only when I hit the brakes, and it almost wouldn't make sense, except the engine's struggling to get enough gas because it's sucking in a whole bunch of extra air that it usually wouldn't have, because it would have a check valve stopping it. So, very important. Okay, so what we got here is basically just shows you what happens with the moisture content raising. So basically your hydraulic fluid is going to actually suck water out of the regular air humidity, and it's going to pull it in, and it's going to be I'll look up the word and put it here or something. I think it's called hydroscopic, which is basically means that it's water is attracted to it. It'll actually suck it right out and take it on. And so we have a special meter that measures how much content of water you have, and at 2%, you're still within the bounds of being okay. However, 3% needs to be changed, and then the meter goes to 4% plus, and that's way off the scales. You need to get the water out of the system. That's why you do a brake fluid exchange. Now, oftentimes now you have timed interval, because if you have so much air exposure via like Honda would, then you would go ahead and change it out approximately every 3 years. I've seen some manufacturers say 2 years. So I would kind of go with the Honda as a good reference, though. If you want to take really great care of your vehicle, just change it on out regardless of how much you have. That way you don't have to worry about it. You move on, you know that you're in a situation that's good. It also later on doesn't wear and tear. The caliper, what are called the seals or cups inside of there, or the cups inside of the wheel cylinders that we'll go over, or, well, the wheel cylinders that maybe we already went over. I'll see what order I put this in. Moving along, we got this moisture content, brake fluid temperature, gets hot, you start to lose braking ability, and you also end up with a lot of rust and other items in the line. Your ABS system stops working. Oftentimes you'll see that people end up with an ABS light on. A lot of times it's because they didn't do a basic fluid exchange. Sometimes it's because a sensor or the pump's gone bad. The computer oftentimes can go out on those too. But very important, get your ABS system checked out. It does stop more efficiently and going to stop your vehicle quicker. If you've ever had to stop really fast and you feel what almost feels like a grind or a loud in the pedal, a grind, that is your ABS system working exactly how it's supposed to work. It does approximately 11 pumps per second. No one can do 11 pumps per second. That allows you to continue to steer while you drive. Keep going straight, no matter how, if you have the brakes locked up, no matter how hard you have it turned one way, the car just keeps going straight unless those wheels can have some turning. That's the importance. Also, the importance is it's going to feed exactly what each wheel needs per wheel as far as braking goes, because it's going to have its monitors. Basically, on ice, you're going to have one tire on ice maybe, and you don't want that one causing you extra issues. So get that ABS system checked out and taken care of. You're safer, everyone else is. So, all right, so what ends up happening, this does happen where brake lines start to have issues. You lose, say, brake pressure. You end up with air in the system. Doesn't want to stop right. Big problems. Brake lines, a lot due to the elements, maybe depending on weather conditions, may be changed at different times. Hydraulic hose, basically. Insulated hydraulic hose. So basically, you end up with the moisture comes in, then you apply, get the leak. No bueno, no bueno. Master cylinder, very important item. This is when you hit the brakes here. It basically leverages this cylinder in order to you have a ton of pressure that continues on down the brake lines to the wheels from your master cylinder. Now, oftentimes, there is a leak on your master cylinder where you'll notice your leak is going to be right here in the vacuum booster. Sometimes it'll go inside the vacuum booster and that'll cause the booster to go out, and sometimes it'll just be pouring down the front of the booster here. Now, what you do want to look for is that brake fluid does eat paint, and your vacuum booster is going to be painted. So you start to lose paint there, you know that you got a leak. Change out your master cylinder before you have more problems. Maybe it's just a slow leak at the rear seal at that time, and you can move on and save your vacuum booster from the headache of having to do that and the cost also. So go ahead and change it out. Once again, you'll see like a rust and missing paint below this main diaphragm right here. Brake fluid does eat paint. You're going to want to look out for it right here at the bottom of the booster. You end up with some rust and everything else. This is showing us a leak, basically allowing some air in and also some fluid that is going to be passing the proper area. So let's see. Okay. All right, so this is how it's supposed to look when the brakes are normally applied, and then it transfers the fluid through both. Now, when you have one of the seals leaking, it's doing nothing in this rear brake line, if you notice, which normally is the first in the series to be pressed, which goes to your front brakes oftentimes, depending on the strategy of the engineering of that make and model and year. It changes all the time, but the very first one in line here would actually be going towards your front brakes. It's very important, especially if you see a leak going on, that you take care of it, and you'll notice by the fact that it's going to be leaking right here, and paint oftentimes will go bad. Go ahead and get your master cylinder taken care of if that's the case. Have it addressed by a professional. I can't tell you to try it at home, that's for sure, because there's some special procedures to go through when you put it in order to make sure the rest of the system's going to be okay. Some people might just put it on there, put some fluid in it, and they end up ramming into something. Don't do that unless you know absolutely what you're doing, or you take it to a professional. Alright, so this is going to be your basic drum design. Your lining is going to be in a little different area, different strategy. This is really good for rear brakes the way it works. People do like them. You do need some sort of an assembly like this on most vehicles because of a parking brake, okay, and that'll be built within even rear disc brakes most of the time. Sometimes they do have electronic calipers which do come out. Does take a special tool. A lot of people get fooled by those and ruin the calipers in the rear if they're electric, and that's what does all the work. Volkswagen is very common for that. Audi, Porsche has a strategy on at least one vehicle I know to do that with the electronic pistons. So, moving right along, shows you applying the brake pedal, release it, but also an out around drum, okay? You get some vibration, oftentimes in the rear. A professional is going to know, they should know by, you'll oftentimes get a bad vibration if that's what's causing the main vibration in the rear end while applying brakes. You oftentimes won't feel it in your steering wheel. Car stopped, you hit the parking brake. Basically, that's the cable that's gonna, the blue cable right there pulls in a a leverage system basically that mechanically locks it into place with the cable and that strategy. Let's see here. Now, very important, you take off the drum, you flip back these cups. You may not see any fluid unless you get the dust boot off of there, and sometimes the fluid comes pouring out. And you need to check that. It's your responsibility to make sure you're safe and everyone else on the road's safe, even if you say, I don't care. Don't do that to other people. It's not fair to yourself. You'll regret it in the end. Check your wheel cylinder. Right here is going to be a dust cap, and you're going to pull that out and make sure that there's no leak of hydraulic fluid behind there. That is very, very important. Here's going to be your example of a leaking wheel cylinder. You apply the brakes here. That one's a gusher. Like I said, not always going to happen. Sometimes it'll leak and you won't see it in that unless you flip back that cup. And if you flip back that little dust boot, then you can see that the cups back there are leaking. And this is where you end up with a real problem. You end up losing your whole braking system if you go too low on fluid. All right, broken return spring. What ends up happening, it basically leaves the brakes on all the time. Maybe not to full capacity, but definitely overloads them, makes them hot, wears them out. You end up buying new drums, new kit, ends up overheating your wheel cylinders too, which means you're replacing those a lot of times. So as most things go, you hear a little bit of noise or something, have it inspected. When it comes to brakes, there's no messing around. Get a professional to look at it. All right, so you have here a leaking axle seal, which can do much of what ends up causing a lot of liquid decay as far as the shoes go, even if the wheel cylinder's there. Now, obviously, this would be for more your rear-wheel drive type vehicles like your trucks and such like this with a straight axle in the rear, a regular rear end. You're going to end up finding that the seals oftentimes leak. And the seal goes around, decays your drum, your linings, and then you end up with problems of you need that plus the axle seal, the shoes, just because they're contaminated with fish oil smelling type grease in the rear end. Not a good situation, and it also could mess with your wheel cylinders in this area. So this shows a little diagram what it is to get the thing replaced. Pull the axle out, pop it in. A lot of times the reason the seal's gone bad is because the bearing's either loose or where the bearing rides. This happens quite often where the bearing rides on the axle is actually worn out or chipped, and that's what actually causes the wobble of the axle to go back and forth. And when that happens, it wears out that seal. That sucker's gone. We've got a leaker, kids. It's just the way it goes. So, not a good situation. Get that taken care of. This right here is going to show you axle comes out. The place that it rides on, sometimes the bearing or the axle shaft itself is worn, and that's what goes out around causing that seal to leak. You could put in a new seal. Thing will still leak because that axle or bearing is an issue. So don't be surprised sometimes if you get a call back and it's all torn down and you say, hey, you need a new axle too, because that's whoever's doing it, professional. I sure hope it's a professional. Usually what's going to end up happening is they're calling you back, they're taking care of you, they're making sure that the vehicle doesn't have the same problems over again, and you got to trust that that's the case. Ask for your old parts back if you ever are in question, or ask for second opinions. Otherwise, the best thing you could do is have a mechanic that you go to, and that's who is basically the representative for your vehicle and for you, and to help you for the life of the vehicle, that you trust and know that it's going to be taken care of properly. Okay, like I was saying earlier about the ABS system, this is a good diagram. Shows an emergency stop, basically what would happen. You may have one skid, one not skid, but is going to adjust accordingly because it knows, depending on whether, say, it was running over ice or oil or something like this, whether it was skidding. It's not a total anti-skid system. You may still get a little bit of screech here and there. However, it is an anti-lock brake system, so it doesn't allow your brakes to completely lock up, causing you to lose full control of the vehicle, and it works on all 4 different wheels, which is very, very important to the stability of a vehicle. Get that taken care of today or tomorrow or sooner than then, yesterday. It's worth a shot. Well, listen, thank you for checking out the brakes. Make sure yours are working right. Give us a ring. We're in Claremont, Pomona, Laverne. We'll take care of the car. We'll do it. All right, so that's it. Thanks for hanging out for this brake system visual tour. Gives you an idea of what's going on, whether you're doing it yourself, just interested in how things function and work, or you actually need to get the repair and are either at your mechanics or your vehicle is here. Go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for coming along for this little brake tour, and you guys have a wonderful day, evening. Don't go too long without getting your brakes checked and done. All right, everybody, out of here. Take care. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, help us out a little. Leave a comment, question, any of that good stuff. Throw us out a little interaction. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. Everyone take care. Have a great one.